What did we learn from Everton to Brighton 0? And it's a positive one, and I'm going to be looking at some of the key tactical things that happened in the game, which led to Everton getting that 2-0 win, and also, importantly, keeping a clean sheet somehow against Brighton. Let's look at it. So, straight away, two changes in the lineup, and those changes were Jack Grealish coming in as a starter this time, and Tierno Barry also leading the line as an Everton striker for the first time in the Premier League from the start of the game. And I thought these changes were actually very important in Everton's approach to the game because it offered so much for Everton on the ball, but also without the ball. And that's where we're going to start because Brighton had the ball for most of the first interactions, but it ended up often looking something like this. Van Hecke in possession is often very important for Brighton. He always gets over 100 touches in games that Brighton dominate, and that's because they look to give him the ball and look to play out from his ball-playing ability at centre-back. But Van Hecke will often look to play it short to Carlos Baleba because of his ball-carrying qualities as a central midfielder. Him turning and then being able to carry the ball up the pitch is a big part in how Brighton play because it allows the other centre midfielders and strikers to all stay quite high up the pitch, knowing that Baleba can carry this ball up the pitch to then give it to them in the final third. But Everton were actually quite switched on in how they stopped them from doing this, and we're going to look at how that affected Everton's play during the game. But from a tactical perspective, this is what it looked like, with Ayari dropping deep. Dewsbury Hall became very, very tight to Baleba. Meanwhile, Grealish was often very close to Mats Wiefer. Barry came in as well to help the press, meaning that when Van Hecke had the ball, he didn't have any short options available to him because they were all being pressed by the Everton forward line. And that was a big part in Everton's approach, especially because it forced Brighton to do this. Play long and over the top to Minte, and for the most part, Everton dealt with it, be that with James Garner winning an aerial duel, or Michael Keane coming across and winning the aerial duel, or at one point in the game, Pickford came across and cleared it over here, and we dealt with it, because inviting those long balls can be a good way of getting the ball back, especially with the height that Everton have got in the defensive line these days. Another way Brighton looked to play the ball through the thirds was with Van Hecke on the ball, trying to punch these balls through into Danny Welbeck by cutting out the Everton midfield. But for the most part, Everton were quite structured in their approach to this, meaning that Tim Iroegbunam especially, there's an example of this I'm going to show later on, was able to get in the way of these passing lanes, interrupt the play, win the ball back, and importantly, when he had the ball, he was often driving forward with it, allowing everybody else to go and stand higher up the pitch, meaning that Everton had bodies challenging this Brighton back four. And the way we did it when we got into the final third was crucial because we took our chances well. And one player in particular, it did this better than anybody, I thought, and it led to Brighton being simply terrified of Everton. First off, this is what we noticed from the start of the game. This is in the first couple minutes of the game, and this was a real positive. Jack Grealish looking to isolate their right back, Mats Wiefer. And the beauty of this is that he was joined. A problem we had against Leeds was that Iliman Ndiaye was often trying to take on two players at once. But in Tim Iroegbunam's running from midfield, we were targeting the space that Mats Wiefer as a right back left to go and press Jack Grealish, which meant that we were dragging people out of position, meaning there were spaces in other parts of the pitch. As you can see here, spaces do occur for Everton players to move into. A lot of the Brighton players are moving towards their own goal, a position you don't really want to be in when you're trying to get into a defensive structure. This is a good example of it with De Kuiper not only running back towards his own goal, he's also looking across at Jack Grealish, whilst also not realising that Iliman Ndiaye is right behind him. And this played a big part in Everton's goal, the first one especially. I'm going to go on to that in a second. But out of possession, what we spoke about on the tactics board there, was just how positive Everton were in their press. And what I liked about it to start with is that it wasn't a 4-2-3-1 like the lineup suggested. It was almost a 4-1-4-1. As you can see here, Gana Gueye dropping as the only defensive midfielder. Meanwhile, Tim Iroegbunam stepped up to join with Kieran Dewsbury Hall, Jack Grealish and Iliman Ndiaye, creating that line of four midfielders, meaning that there was no way through the middle for Brighton to play it. As you can see here, Van Heck is on the ball. He's got his head up because he wants to play these passes through the lines. But literally no passing lanes were available for him to just simply play it. And even if he wants to play it out wide, Jack Grealish is in a good place. He's in between these two, meaning that if the ball does go this way, he can come across, or if it goes to there, he can shift across, as you can see with Michael Keane also stepping up to help that aggressive press. And by not engaging them, but instead by cutting up these passing lanes, by semi-pressing them, it meant that the centre-backs always had the ball, but they couldn't really do anything with it. And that's fine, because when they tried to do something with it, they often just played it long. And like, as you can see here, Van Heck has got his head up. All of the passing lanes are shut off. Baleba is asking for it, but Dewsbury Hall's body position, in the way that he's slightly moving in this direction, but also open enough to go the other way, makes it a very risky pass to play across. Because if he plays it across and Dewsbury Hall steps across to win it, well, Tierno Barry is then through and can exploit the space that Van Hecker has left. And again here, the way that Dewsbury Hall pressed in this game was absolutely fantastic. You can see here, he's not really going towards the ball, and no, he should, because he's again shutting off this pass to Carlos Baleba, meaning that Van Hecker can't pass it to him in the first place, and that prevents the problem of Baleba getting the ball, turning, and then carrying it all the way up the pitch, with Everton tracking back towards their own goal, spaces occurring, and us conceding chances. And I thought the attacking positivity from Everton was something to behold in this game as well, because this moment in particular caught my eye. Grealish isn't even on the left wing in this instance. It's actually James Garner who's gone from left back to push up into that space that Grealish has left. And because of this, with Dewsbury Hall going into the channel, it gave Everton a very impactful forward line. Look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Everton players all in the final third. And what that does is it gives Everton so many options in terms of punching it through into the final third. It makes Brighton sit off a bit as well. As you can see, these two centre midfielders in the middle aren't really sure who's supposed to press Timmy Igbunam. Meanwhile, there's always this out ball laterally to Garnegay, meaning that all these bodies committed forward aren't that much of a risk, because a simple pass can be played, and if you play it to Garnegay, you can then play it around and then into more space. And then even if it doesn't work out, you've still got enough bodies around the ball in the first place to press if you do lose it, and that counter press can be a good source of goals. But one problem I did notice was the impact of Yankuba Minte on the right-hand side. His pace was a bit of a problem for James Garner, who I thought defended very well for the most part, but this was an example of him possibly showing that he's not really a left-back and hasn't got the athleticism to thrive as a left-back. But in this instance, Yankuba Minte does play it out wide to Mats Wiefer, and it leads to Mats Wiefer then getting the ball in this wide area of the pitch, meaning that James Garner has had to come across to obviously press the ball like he should. Garnegay does do well to track Minte's run, but when the ball does get played into this area, Everton do lack a bit of recovery pace, especially in the full-back areas, meaning that a player like Minte can then go on to target all of this space that's left behind. And when you overcommit into pressing a full-back like James Garner does here, it does open up gaps. But today, Yankuba Minte did have his moments, and he looked very dangerous. Of course, a player Everton wanted in the past, and he was a very big threat down that side. However, we did well to end up shutting him out and keeping that clean sheet somehow, even though another penalty was conceded, which, well, we're not even going to talk about it because this is a positive video, so let's just forget about that. And now we've got something that put a big smile on my face, because 3 of the new signings all combined for this, and this is where the goal came from. So we've got Tierno Barry all the way on the other side of the pitch. His knockdown allowed Iliman Ndiaye to come inside, get the ball, and then Dewsbury Hall did the rest by receiving the ball and then looking for that man out wide, Jack Grealish, making this penetrative run in behind. And the width that Grealish offers from the left-hand side, I know there's been a lot of chat about Jack Grealish and his position for Everton. Will he be a number 10 or will he play off the left? But I think today's game proved that it doesn't really matter. As long as you've got him on the pitch, you're going to be all right. Because Dewsbury Hall in the number 10, he's not only busy, he's excellent at pressing off the ball for starters, but he does weight these passes beautifully into Jack Grealish. And when you've got someone who can feed Grealish, it means that Grealish can stay higher, meaning that he doesn't need to drop deep to get the ball. And Dewsbury Hall's impact in this team will be underrated by a lot of fans outside of Everton. But I think that people who watch Everton week in, week out will come to really appreciate Dewsbury Hall's influence on bringing others into the game. Next, this is something I've been looking forward to speaking about this entire video. This Jack Grealish cross that came from the pass we've just seen from Dewsbury Hall. Jack Grealish works it all the way into the box because defenders are absolutely terrified to step in because they know that he can go either way. He can beat them. He doesn't need the pace to beat them because he's got such quick feet and reaction times that he can make his decision after the defender's made his decision. And this ball itself across the 6-yard box is just brilliant. And I'll give you a few different reasons. He hits it with such power and precision that the Brighton defenders don't really want to go for it in case it rebounds off their knee or hits their left foot, for example, and ends up going in. But the tempo and speed and the power behind this means that it's impossible to react quickly to it if you're not moving in this direction towards the goal. If you're moving in this direction, it becomes a problem because you have to readjust to then try to clear it, and it just is a difficult task. Grealish knows this better than anyone, and you can see here the proactiveness of Iliman Ndiaye to get behind that back line and sneak in at the back post gets him a goal. And that's a big factor of having Grealish and Ndiaye in the same team. Last season, we always had Ndiaye in the team, and he was obviously labelled as Everton's biggest and possibly only threat. With Jack Grealish, he takes a lot of attention away from Ndiaye, meaning that Ndiaye can go unnoticed at the back post like this and score these goals. Maybe last season, he wasn't able to do this because he was the biggest threat for Everton that everybody knew you had to stop. But with Grealish in the team, it now becomes a multifaceted attack in how we're able to hurt teams. We can do it with different players in different ways. And when you add in the new boy, Tyler Dibbling, fingers crossed nothing goes wrong with his medical, it's going to be impressive. It's going to be very fluid, very dynamic, and it's going to hurt teams. But one player that we signed last summer that didn't really kick on as we expected, possibly, after a few bright cameos at the start of last season, was Tim Iroegbunam. And you can see here, he's got a foot in, making an interception. And that ball actually came from Van Hecke trying to play a daisy cutter through the lines to Danny Welbeck. And if this ball comes off, Danny Welbeck is able to turn and then look to attack the back four of Everton, who don't really want to step up and break their defensive line because that leaves spaces for the likes of Matt O'Reilly, for the likes of Yankuba Minte to target. And that could be a very dangerous situation to find yourself in. But the lines were clearly read by Iroegbunam, who was excellent, I thought, today, not only at intercepting the ball like this, but also carrying the ball forward and making those runs that we talked about earlier in behind the defence. I think his mobility is something that's very needed as a profile in Everton's squad. Those little refinements and tweaks to his game to make him a better technical player hopefully will come with more minutes and reps under his belt. He had a moment in the first half where he had a shot that just went wide, but that comes from a very nice piece of play where he actually gets fouled, and he got fouled twice in the final third, and his big frame just allows him just to bulldoze through whilst having very good feet to beat the players. It's just that final end product, that final pass or shot that needs to improve. And I'll hold my hands up, against Leeds I wasn't impressed, but today he showed exactly why. He's not been sent out on loan just yet, maybe because we've not got many players to pick from, but I don't think after this performance it would be wise to send him on loan. We've got nobody like him, and he's shown today that he maybe does deserve a run in the team with what he can offer. And now back to the new signings, because I thought Tieno Barry in this game, his performance will go under the radar because Jack Grealish got 2 assists, Iliman Ndiaye scored the first goal at the new stadium, and that's fine. But his performance did not go under the radar for me because I think a lot of Everton fans shared this sentiment with me that he was doing a lot of the ugly work as a striker for Everton today. With all these technical attacking midfielders we've got in Iliman Ndiaye, Dewsbury Hall and Grealish, you need that person up front who's going to make it stick. And there were moments where Barry didn't make it stick, but he's still quite raw as a striker, and obviously that's come out from the club that maybe he needs to refine a bit more. But there were some positives here that I think we really could do with, and I don't think you get from anyone else. And this moment in particular, the way he cushions this ball, and not only does he do this first time, he does it whilst having a lot of pressure from Lewis Dunk. He side foots it to Iliman Ndiaye, who stood quite close to him, something I'd want to see a bit more of, especially because of how good these two interact with each other. He cushions it to Iliman Ndiaye, which allows Everton to work to the other side of the pitch to give it to Jack Grealish. And this is what the best part of Jack Grealish is, the fear factor you get from him. And look at this. Mats Wife was absolutely terrified of Jack Grealish here. Mats Wife actually started higher up. He was about here when Jack Grealish got the ball, but he instantly just backs off because he does not want to get beat by Grealish. He was already booked at this point. Both fullbacks of Brighton were booked because of Everton's ability out wide to hurt teams. And this was a great example of why Jack Grealish as a left winger does really work for Everton, because he's able to lay it off to James Garner. The criticism I had for James Garner in the last game was that he wasn't attacking these wide areas as a left back, meaning that Iliman Ndiaye came into a lot of trouble running into corridors that simply weren't there for him. But with Grealish starting quite wide to receive the ball, it means that James Garner doesn't really have to be that option that offers width when he's from left back, meaning that he can then move inside into these positions more familiar of a centre midfielder. And something that he's clearly added to his game is this distance shooting. In pre-season, we saw it a few times. We saw a free kick. We saw a couple nice efforts at goal. But this one here is a very good one for me because the way he strikes it is magnificent. I think his head is over the ball. His leg, his standing leg is very close to the ball, meaning that his moving leg, the one he strikes it with, is able to just go through the ball with power, through the middle of the ball, and it results in him getting off a strike that is so unsavable that the Brighton goalie can't do anything about. And then it's 2-0 to Everton, all because of Jack Grealish's fear factor and then James Garner's ability to strike a ball so cleanly. And as well, Jack Grealish is often seen as this luxury player that is nice to have. And I think he disproved that a lot because despite being a luxury player and obviously a world-class player on his day, I think the £100 million price tag proves that, but he did this dirty work a lot, and I don't think it'll get spoken about that much. But Minte was a big threat for Everton down this right-hand side, and James Garner was often beaten by him just because the raw pace of Minte and the quick feet allowed him to bypass him, especially when James Garner didn't have any help. But Jack Grealish, the so-called luxury player who's just there for a bit of fun, is not. He's actually working back, putting in this slide tackle, a perfectly executed slide tackle, by the way, for the team. And I think him as that luxury player or that world-class player setting this example just lifts the entire floor for the club and makes everyone else better, just gives them that bit of confidence, that energy to put in these tackles, to be quite aggressive in how we attack and to believe we are better than teams. Something I feel like we haven't done in previous years is that we believe we can go out and win. It's always been, let's try not to lose. But now I think it's changing. And that was the first win of the season, but also the first win at the Hill Dickinson Stadium. Something that could have been a monkey on our backs if we hadn't have got it against Brighton. I'd also really like the fact that Iliman Ndiaye scored the first goal at the new stadium and the last goal at Goodison. I think that was quite poetic in a way, and I'm a big fan of it. As I always like to see Iliman Ndiaye playing football. He's just a magician. The way he beat those players in the first half and just glided past people and then had the confidence to take the shot on with his left foot is something that is just so refreshing to see. It's so positive. Everything about this game was positive, minus the few chances that Brighton had. They hit the woodwork twice. Speculative efforts, by the way, efforts that wouldn't usually go in. That Mitoma volley, how often do you see those go in? And then the Van Hecke one that where it deflected off Grealish. That was an unlucky moment for Brighton, you could say, but how often do you see speculative centre-back shots go in? And then the penalty, I don't know. I'm not sure where he's supposed to put his hand. Same for Tarkowski against Leeds. But, you know, it doesn't matter because we came away with the win. We played brilliantly. The improvement in just a matter of few days is fantastic to see. And hopefully I get to keep breaking down goals. Subscribe to see me break down more goals because I feel like this attack is going to get us somewhere this season.